All right. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another Illuminate live stream. Today, we're going to talk about The Matrix, and that gets me really excited because it is definitely one of my favorite movies, and I'm sure it's a lot of people's, one of their favorite movies because it's something that has just stood the test of time. It's stayed with us, it's stayed relevant, and has become, if not, more relevant as time has gone on. Plus, it's a incredible film because it really takes you on that hero's journey and it follows the meta narratives of the hero's journey. And one of the reasons that it does that, and probably why it's so captivating still today, is because it has a lot of truths in it. And there's a lot of hidden truths about it that aren't commonly discussed. They have to do with, themes of enlightenment. And that's what I try to offer on this channel, that perspective. So if that interests you, please subscribe. I often just see what is on YouTube, see what's happening in the world. And if there's a way that I can offer my perspective on things, I will. And I try to do things that interest me and that I think will interest some people. And The Matrix is one of the best movies ever made. And I found this incredible channel called The Take that does a great breakdown and offers really nice insights of these films. So we're going to follow that today and react to the points and the observations that are being made there and see how they can relate or see how they connect to what we're going to talk about with enlightenment. So let us share this screen. This first, my mouse right there, great channel. Subscribe to that. They have amazing breakdowns of a lot of films. So without further ado, let's jump right in.
The Matrix is a computer-generated dream world.
The possibility that we could be living in an illusion or simulation which obscures our true reality has appeared through the ages in a diverse array of thought experiments and religious writings.
That's right.
The Hindu religion has the idea that the phenomenal world is an illusion, called Maya, separate from the eternal reality, which is God. Buddhism has a similar concept of elusive reality, samsara, and it sees the goal of enlightenment as freeing ourselves from the suffering of attachment to this plane of life. The Taoist story, Zhuangzi Dreamed He Was a Butterfly, features a dreamer who doesn't know he's himself and not a butterfly.
Have you ever had a dream, Neo, that you were so sure was real?
Gnosticism has the idea of a demiurge, a kind of demigod who created the flawed system in which we find ourselves, while a higher truth exists beyond that structure. The Gnostics also emphasize knowledge as the key to spirituality and paint ignorance as humankind's major obstacle.
Only try to realize the truth.
The philosophy is also shaped by Immanuel
Gonna
Kant's
be
discussion
right.
of how.
So there's a lot of, essentially what they pointed to were religious ideas that share the idea of being in a world that may not be the real world. And now they're going to talk about some philosophers. And of course, that's what philosophy is all about, is pontificating and thinking and debating what's going on.
The way that we filter reality through tools like language leads to self-deceit and a blindness to the truth.
I think it's a sort of straightforward extrapolation of the stuff we get in Kant, and the idea that the world is in some way or other a construction of what's going on in my mind.
Philosopher René Descartes imagined the concept of an evil demon who's intentionally deceiving him. A 20th century update to this, the brain in a vat thought scenario, imagines a brain connected to a supercomputer that simulates reality. In other words, it's pretty much the premise of The Matrix.
How would you know the difference between the dream world and the real world?
The movie is also a perfect illustration of Plato's famous allegory of the cave, in which people are chained inside a cave watching shadows
This one's
against
really
the
relevant.
wall, thinking that's all there is. When the philosopher manages to get free, facing the light of the sun outside the cave is blinding and painful.
Why are my eyes so? You've never used them before.
Meanwhile, the people imprisoned in the cave will distrust this freed man and fight to protect this shadow show they believe to be reality.
Most of these people are not ready to be unplugged. And many of them are so inert, so hopelessly dependent on the system, that they will fight to protect it.
In Plato's allegory, it's only
Lady in
the
a red
rarest
dress.
soul that manages to escape. Most believe the highest possible achievement is to be one of the artists in charge of projecting the puppet shows on the wall for the masses.
And I want to be rich.
To keep the
someone
illusion
important,
alive.
like an actor.
The deepest point of all these thought exercises is to teach us to be skeptical, to distrust our senses,
Born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch.
and to consider that there could be deeper truths and values of the utmost importance which aren't readily apparent in our sensual, materialist surface reality. So, why did The Matrix urge
Okay, so that was a really good overview, and it's something that I also want to kind of push back on initially because the way I interpret the Matrix isn't that. Let me get this screen. How do I? My interpretation of the Matrix isn't necessarily that we live in a world that is a complete simulation. Meaning that this world isn't real in any sense of the phrase real, that even our very senses, the smell, taste, and touch, are just only signals that are not rooted in actual representation of something tangible, which is ultimately what I know a lot of this, like this early 2000s sci-fi genre extrapolates to with the invention of computers, right? And then later AI. What I think is that the first bit when it was, let's see, when it was discussing the religious ideals, I think that that's really where this story starts. So we got a comment here. The old Matrix and how it had so many rules, and the new Matrix is based inside the mind. This is the Old Testament versus New Testament. Yeah, there we go. So in the Matrix 4, they actually do. And look, if people are interested, I'll go through all the Matrix films. This one really focuses on the first one. But in general, the idea of the Old Testament versus the New Testament essentially boils down to how we perceive ourselves and how we perceive the world. So it has to do with our perception, not necessarily the denial of our perception, which goes to say, and if I link this back up so you guys can see. All right. So when he mentioned Hinduism and they talk about
as a similar concept has appeared through the ages in a diverse array of thought experiments and religious writings. The Hindu religion has the idea that the phenomenal world is an illusion called Maya, separate from the eternal reality, which is God.
Okay, so yeah, the term Maya and then Brahman, right? And then that's how, they're able to distinguish between what's real and what is the illusion. But it doesn't really mean the illusion doesn't necessarily mean it's not real. It's just think of it as like the tip of the iceberg. It's representative of a greater real. So it has more to do with not seeing a different world, but more so like everything that you're seeing, putting it into the right context to widen your perspective to see the rest of what's going on. In other words, a greater truth. Now, in that journey, that's the interesting journey. That is the path to enlightenment. This premise of the simulation and the simulacrum is still based in a lot of ways in a duality, right? Is it this or is it that? What these ancient ideas purport is a going beyond of that. And that's what I want to jump into with this next video. Still the same team. They are incredible, the take. But this one talks about Neo specifically, a guide to freeing your mind. Um, Look at that. Look 111 on the liking. It's nice. That's a nice binary. It's the something, and then the zero would be the nothing. Both very relevant. So let's get into this, what they call a guide to freeing your mind, because that's where they talk about a lot of the internal truths. And I will be alluding these, these enlightenment ideals on this hero's journey. Shout out to Joseph Campbell and Joseph Campbell fans who, really took that hero's journey to a whole new level and wrote an incredible book called Hero with a Thousand Faces. And ultimately, the point is everyone has to go through this journey, and this journey is always an internal journey. Um, and talks about why so many, like why the most popular stories and myths and books and movies, talk about the same things, because that's ultimately where everyone finds truth. It is the truth. So, all right, let's get into this incredible breakdown that they have, and I will comment in between and all around to bring in these ideals around enlightenment.
The genius of The Matrix is it proved that movies just care about dry philosophical ideas. In the Wachowskis' 1999 film about a programmer who realizes he's living in a computer simulation, the deepest intrigue doesn't lie in what happens, but in why it happens and what it means.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
At the heart of this story are questions like, what's real? Do we actually want the truth? And can human beings be free? Such abstract inquiries become tangible, personal, urgent. As Neo progresses from nihilism to enlightenment and becomes the One, the only
Enlightenment.
person with the potential to free human beings from their machine overlords. This tightly structured hero's journey is the philosopher's journey,
I call it the hero's journey.
packaged as a
Philosopher's journey is an
gripping,
interesting term.
action-packed Hollywood flick. 20 years later, here's our take on the deep meaning of The Matrix and why it's a guide to freeing your mind, which can help us uncode the modern matrix of our times.
Free your mind.
This video is brought to you by Mubi. You're named Morpheus, fittingly named
Have you ever had a
Belief.
All right, so this
On
is an
closer
interesting
inspection-
roadmap that they
on
put
closer inspection-
together. Okay, so this roadmap here are highlighting the 7 key points that they're going to discuss when it comes to the Matrix.
We can identify 7 major phases: dreaming, destruction, reconstruction, self-knowledge, doubt, belief, and love. Step 1. Dreaming of the question.
Have you ever had a dream, Neo, that you were sure was real? What if you were unable to wake from that dream?
Neo's quest for truth begins in his dreams. When we first meet him, he's asleep, while his computer runs a search for a mysterious figure named Morpheus, fittingly named after the Greek god Dreams. Someone in Neo's computer, who we later learn is Trinity, tells him to wake up. Neo's not quite ready to do this yet.
Dreams obviously play a huge role. Oh, that's a weird screen grab. Let me
And the
move
two
this.
sequences following this lead back to
Okay, dreams obviously play a big role. I mean, a lot of when people talk about enlightenment, another term that they use is like awakening, right? To wake up, right? It's almost like and then a lot of people think that the interpretation is you're living in a dream world, so you need to wake up to the real world. And that explanation works when you talk about the mind and the way the mind works. But what I think actually happens that when we dream, what we do is we go beyond the mind, in a different way of existing in reality, because it's still part of our reality. Obviously, we all dream, but it's not a reality in which the mind is consciously active. So that goes to say, I would actually say that going beyond the mind is a key point to waking up, where this whole premise and a lot of this, mid-century, turn of the century philosophical existential ideas are so obsessed and focused with the mind that they think that, you know, waking up is going back into, uh, going back into the mind. But the problem is, I think that is the mind is really what produces the matrix in the first place. So in order to get out of the matrix isn't to, go into a different part of your mind or a more well thought out part of your mind. It's to go beyond the mind. And when we sleep and when we dream, we do something like that. But look, I'll just tease that for now. We'll get back into this. It's a pretty deep concept, and it'll play out a little smoother if I let this continue.
To him waking up in bed, unsure if he's just had some strange nightmare. Neo complains of an inability to tell waking life from dreaming.
You ever have that feeling where you're not sure if you're awake or still dreaming?
And when he finally meets the god of dreams himself, Morpheus speaks to Neo's feeling
Morpheus
of
is the man.
surreality.
You have the look of a man who accepts what he sees because he is expecting to wake up.
Mm.
Ironically, this is not far from the truth.
The twist is that it's Neo's so-called real life up until now that's been the dream world.
You've been living in a dream world, Neo.
Neo's mentor Morpheus represents intuition and faith in the unseen forces of the world, in direct opposition to the machine projections that use the eyes and rational.
Here we go. This is the biggest first clue into enlightenment here that is hidden in the movie Matrix.
Called real life up until now that's been the dream world.
You've been living in a dream world, Neo.
Neo's mentor Morpheus represents intuition and faith.
Intuition is a huge one. Listen to what she says here.
In the unseen forces of the world.
Unseen forces of the world. I mean, that's I think that's the hitting the nail on the head. You can call it's the formless or the unmanifested. What is that? What is intuition? And I actually pulled up the definition of intuition. And I ended up finding a quote from Einstein I'd like to share right now. The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. This is the crux of my argument here. The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, right? I would call that life's intelligence, that the thing that gives life itself, right? That makes our heart breathe. You don't, with your mind that's so intelligent, and it is intelligent, but it's not, we're talking about a different level of intelligence. Your mind is more like cleverness. Intelligence, how does a flower know to find the sun? It doesn't have thoughts. It doesn't have a brain. You don't know how to make your cells multiply. You make your heart beat, breathing. All that happens automatically, right? All that is powered by something. That's the gift. That's the sacred gift. And the rational mind is a faithful servant. Now, what's important about the way Einstein phrased this is the order in which one serves the other. Prioritization. Okay. What we have right now is we've created a society that has it backwards. We worship, we honor the servants, and that has blinded us to the gift. Now, that's what I refer to as the matrix. Okay. It's the blinding. It's not the fact that the mind doesn't know, that the mind is dumb. The mind is, creating a fake world. The problem is the mind is just out of place. And there's the gift that is life. And then the mind is a part of that puzzle. It's a part of the body, right? But it's not the whole thing. And we have put the cart before the horse in society. So the fact that Morpheus represents this intuition is the big key to the the through line of how he thinks in terms of the one, and how he's has the determination and the knowledge, and I guess they would call it the faith, to be free in a fearless manner, right? Because the intuition is that knowing before thinking, beyond thinking. So let's see how this plays out, and I'll jump back in where appropriate.
In direct opposition to the machine projections that use the eyes and rational arguments to enslave. His ship is called
The Nebuchadnezzar.
a nod to an ancient Babylonian
Rational
king who,
arguments
in the
enslave.
biblical book Daniel, gave wise men of his kingdom the impossible task of not just interpreting his dream, but
Tons
also
of
telling him what the dream
Judeo-Christian
was.
references in
So,
the
the
film.
Matrix tells us that trusting our intuition and dreams is the beginning of the path toward truth and mind freeing.
You're here because
Oh.
you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life.
This mysterious inner compass points us in the right direction before our rational minds can catch up.
Such shaping fantasies that apprehend more than
Shakespeare.
cool reason ever comprehends.
Neo's intuition and dreams lead him to form a question. Interestingly, we gather that Trinity and the others began their journeys with the same
Trinity.
question.
You know the question, just as I did.
What is the Matrix?
So, what starts all these rebels to be on the path to freedom is a growing awareness of this invisible thing that surrounds them, the Matrix.
That there's something wrong with it. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind.
The Matrix.
The ability
So that's how it happened for me. Is I started asking a question of like exactly what Morpheus just said. Like, is there something wrong with the world here? The world seems insane. Like, why are these things happening? And why do they keep happening in a seemingly habitual way? Why did I see the same patterns repeating? And that's when I first heard of the term programming. Now, this is where it's going to get really interesting, and this is where I think it has a lot of parallels to the idea of the Matrix. It's, again, from my point of view, and again, I'm sure some people that are into AI and can project into the future that this could be the thing, and I think that that's what they're talking about is an AI future. But what the rootedness of this film and the meta narratives and the hero's journey really are rooted in isn't that this world isn't, real. It's that it's being distorted and it's being run seemingly by programs. I think the computerization and the digitalization that happened in the late 90s, early, what is 70s, 80s, and really blew up in the 90s, early 2000s. This movie was made in 99. I think that really allowed our brain to kind of grasp this a little more clearly as we were ourselves participating in creating programs. But I think we always kind of knew. In fact, when we mentioned the Hinduism, they have another term, not just Maya, but they call it Leela. Leela is the divine game. This is a ancient idea that's thousands of year olds that purports that, there is the real reality of our essence, and then there is the forms, the form reality, the things, the senses and the bodies and stuff. And then in this, we play this game so that it all is a game in a way. It all is the Matrix. And so that question that Morpheus that asks, like, why is everything, there's something off. And it is because of programming. And I think understanding programming to me was the biggest step on my path to realizing the truth, and an incredible step for anybody's journey to a more enlightened being. So it's programming, which really correlates with the Matrix here?
Ability to sense the matrix, even though nothing about it can be perceived by the senses,
A prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch.
might remind us of the story about the fish who don't know they're surrounded by water.
Right.
How's the water? And the two young fish swim on for a bit, and then eventually one of them looks over at the other and goes, "What the hell is water?"
To have the initial capacity to free your mind, you have to question the obvious, what's right in front of your eyes.
The point of the fish story is merely that the most obvious, important realities are often the ones that are hardest to see and talk about.
That's
You think
right.
that's air you're breathing now?
The next phase of Neo's enlightenment is destructive truth.
And I would say, add to that water analogy, the reason that it's the hardest to see and the hardest to talk about is because the water, the way we talk, the way we perceive does go through our mind, goes through our brain. And so the brain is the water, like the mind and the thoughts is the water. It does create the matrix. So it's hard to see it. You can't really see it with the mind. That's why I'm saying it's important to go beyond the mind. And I think the water in this case is, the programs that drive your consciousness, and it has to do with the subconscious and the programs and the way in which you were, raised, and of course your genetics, et cetera, your tendencies. So I don't necessarily think this is a world that's created completely out of computer code and that, we have no real objective reference to. I just think that it is a limited perspective of the world. It is a programmed version of the world. Still the world, but just very little. So in enlightenment, that process is expanding that view. Let's continue.
It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth.
Shattering the illusions that blind and enslave us.
You are a slave, Neo.
What's untrue must die. This phase
Mhm.
begins with the
Well, what's true cannot die. Only what's untrue can die. What's true, our essence, that continues. That's how you know what's true and what isn't true. That's how you know what to identify with and what to let go. This chapter 2, this point 2 they're talking about, that's shattering the illusions. That's letting go of the things that you really shouldn't be identifying with, because those things are illusions, they're fabrications, they're not really real. That's a big step in understanding and unraveling what the matrix is.
choice Morpheus offers Neo to remain in his comfortable pre-enlightened state,
The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe.
or to wake up.
You stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Until this point, Morpheus's
Yeah,
team
the
and
pill is
Neo are
perfect. I
just
think
meeting each
drugs
other
have played a big
inside
role
Matrix.
in
But the red pill
consciousness
allows
and
Morpheus's
enlightenment
team to
throughout history.
locate where
That's
Neo's
another
actual
topic,
body
though.
is in the field where machines grow living human beings to use them for energy. As Neo's false conceptions of reality are torn down,
This can be what? Be
A lot of
real?
people would say
the
humans are just
disruption to
used
his
for
mind is so violent
their
that he
energy.
almost dies.
He's going into arrest.
This is the first death and rebirth Neo goes through in the film.
Mm.
Am I dead? Far from it.
Like a baby, he must learn to use his own body
Your muscles have atrophied. We're rebuilding them.
and to begin thinking for himself, as symbolized by seeing through his own eyes.
Why my eyes are...
There you go. I mean, it does feel like a death and a rebirth. I mean, it really is. When you shatter the illusions, you're it's earth shattering, it's world shattering. And then when you start, and it's a scary process. And when you start again, it is like she said, it's like seeing with your own eyes for the first time. And I would say it's like seeing with a completely different new pair of eyes, not glasses, not type of filter, but just a completely new way of seeing in which you see more. But in this movie, this happens relatively early in the film, and he doesn't really get enlightened until the very end. So but they're dropping hints here. The process in which you become enlightened, become the one, is through death. It is the term is die before you die. That's the secret to life, and we'll get into that later, because that's ultimately what he really has to do in the most literal way in the film. And I guess, for your life, it's in the most seemingly difficult way, but it's really simple. And we'll get to that point.
You've never used them before.
Neo's training is a process of unlearning. Morpheus tells Neo,
Don't think you are.
This is what I would call reprogramming.
because the thinking that's
Get
holding
rid
him
of the
back
programs that
is
don't
an
serve you,
obedience to the rules of the
building the
machines
programs
and their
that do.
agents.
Like gravity. What you must learn is that these rules are no different than the rules of a computer system.
This is something we can all learn from, even if we're not yet ready to reject the laws of physics. Are we not also unnecessarily restricted by what we think we must do or can't do?
Right.
What we deem possible? At the beginning of the movie, the power
Limited.
of the agents
Restricted,
seems unbelievably giant. They are manifestations of the system itself.
Yet their strength and their speed are still based in a world that is built on rules. Because of that, they will never be as strong or as fast as you can be.
And the implication is that we too have unlocked power waiting for us if we unlearn our limitations.
I would agree. I would agree with that. It's a great point by Morpheus there, is that, if you really truly accessed your essence, you would realize that nothing from the system, nothing from the programs, from the matrix can match that. That's the living force that we were talking about earlier. That's the true essence. One thing that helped me think about it, it's very interesting, and what we like about movies and the movie Matrix specifically is like the in the Matrix, Morpheus is like the most the most wanted, right? He's like a terrorist. And Trinity and Neo, like, they're the bad guys. And then what's so interesting about that, and why we're always drawn to the bad guys in the films, is because they're the ones that are pushing the system. I mean, in other words, they're the ones that are channeling what I would say is the non-program, the non-binary, the one that goes beyond. I would call it the creative self, which is more in tune to our true essence. And the creative self is the one that is pushing the system. And the system is like trying to limit that, because the system's like, oh no, I'm okay with the structure I built around reality. I don't want to widen my perspective, because when they widen their perspective, they lose control. So a lot of the limitations that you learn have to, have nothing to do with your actual limitations, and have to do with an illusion that the system is telling you is a limitation.
Once we start to unbelieve.
Do you believe that my being stronger or faster has anything to do with my muscles in this place?
After this period of destruction comes the third step, reconstructing a new reality from scratch. This is visualized
I
in
would
Neo's training
I would
sessions with
I would call this, and if you're trying to equate this to enlightenment, I would call this into reconnecting. So it's reprogramming. So undoing the programs that no longer serve you. First, it's realizing the programming, just earth shattering. Then it's trying to figure out, okay, how am I continuing here? So you're starting to reprogram, right? That reprogramming is the way you do that is by reconnecting. What are you reconnecting with? So you're reconnecting with the things that really matter. And that is a very personal quest. It's starting to look at yourself intimately and honestly, and seeing what's limiting you and what is serving you. And you start to disregard the ones that are limiting you, and you're starting to put more focus and put more energy into the programs or into the ideas of yourself that are helping you, that are serving you. And that process is done through reconnecting to the source, the things that the source consists of, which is love, joy, peace, those things. And the stuff that fall out of that camp don't serve you. They usually belong to someone else. It's usually the system saying, "Oh no, listen to this, do this, go out and die for this cause or this cause, or you should be mad about this," right? That's just taking your energy away. Reconnecting is about taking yourself and aligning yourself with that essence.
Morpheus against a blank white background, where they have the ability to summon anything they can think of.
This is the construct.
This is how
It's our
reprogramming
loading
happens.
program.
You
can load anything from clothing.
Yep, and you do that through
equipment.
your life
For the
experience.
first time,
you do
he
that
is
through living your
discovering
life.
agency. This phase
What
has
you
a
choose
lot
to
in
do.
common with the philosophical
Here
stance
come
of
the
existentialism,
philosophers.
which grapples with the idea that human beings really are free. At first, humans tend to despair when they realize their freedom, as they find themselves in a world without given meaning. But existentialists don't see this as depressing. They view freedom as an empowering value because we get to create our own meaning.
That's right.
One of the fathers of existentialism, Friedrich Nietzsche, conceived of a grand hero he called the Übermensch, or Overman, who would create new life-affirming values to give higher meaning to our human existence. Sound familiar?
There was a man born inside who had the ability to change whatever he wanted, to remake the Matrix as he saw fit.
The Matrix is essentially about Neo becoming the Übermensch, or the One.
You are.
You see, and this is where I said in the beginning of this stream, this is kind of where the movie falls short in the quest towards true enlightenment. It still fits, like a lot of the points, a lot of the things that Neo needs to do the rest of the film to get to that point, that all that matches. But the ultimate point that Nietzsche or existential philosophers would make is saying there is nothing that exists unless we create it. And so we can rewrite how society is going to be. And while that is true in the context of what people have prescribed for you isn't essential, it fails to look for truth and see the truth that is there. So it's not necessarily I'm gonna invent something and create something. It's more of I'm going to discover and observe what nature is and put myself in alignment with that. And that's the key. That's the essential difference between existentialism and a lot of the enlightenment ideals.
Are the one, Neo.
But a lot of this still
This
fits.
question
movie,
of whether
what
he's the
happens here
One
is
brings
still
him
relevant.
to the fourth phase of his truth journey, self-knowledge.
It's Latin.
And again, they use the
Means
word
know
knowledge.
thyself.
I would call it self-awareness. This is huge. This know thyself is massive.
Actually about Neo becoming the Übermensch, or the One.
You are the one, Neo.
This question of whether he's the One brings him to the fourth phase of his truth journey, self-knowledge.
Again, self-awareness.
It's Latin. Means know thyself.
To know thyself. Not think about yourself. Know thyself. That is the key motivator to the hero's journey. Remember at the beginning of the stream, I said the hero's journey always ends up being an internal journey, right? Like where you go internally is going to then manifest or be mirrored in the external. The intrinsic is what's important here. And then the extrinsic, the external, is the result of what you do in here. Knowing thyself is an inward pointer. And that is a very famous, I think that was written over, someone knows in the comments, they can they can say. But I think that was written over where the oracles in Delphi in ancient Greece, that was written over the temple there.
Morpheus brings Neo to visit the Oracle, whose name alludes to the Greek Oracle of Delphi. The Oracle
There it
seems
is,
to
Delphi.
tell Neo that he's not the one.
But you already know what I'm going to tell you.
I'm not the one.
Sorry, kid.
In fact,
Seems
though,
to
what
tell him.
she really tells him is that the answers are within him.
Being the
we
one
go.
is just like being in love. No one can tell you you're in love, you just know it.
Yeah.
We can't arrive at self-knowledge through others. Neo can't know he's the one because anyone else says so. And that's why the Oracle strategically
Internal,
shuts down the grand
not
narrative others
external.
have been building on Neo's specialness.
If you are.
What I love about this is it points to something, again, a lot of incredible knowledge in this film. You can't find the truth if you're looking for it outside of yourself. This is the only place you can find it.
Very exciting time.
No one's ever made the first jump.
I know. But what if he does?
Instead, she prepares Neo for a choice he'll soon face.
In the one hand, you'll have Morpheus's life. And in the other hand, you'll have your own.
Her words might strike us as off-topic. Why is she focusing on this instead of talking more about what we all came for, a declaration of Neo's important identity? But the information the Oracle gives him isn't an answer at all. It's a test through which he can define himself.
She told you
Exactly
what you needed to hear. That's all.
While it's tempting to know how things are going to turn out, we're not supposed to rationally comprehend the facts of our future before it comes to pass. Prophecy only valuable insofar as it provides useful information we can draw on as we form
That's right. I mean, prophecy is, like if you go to someone that's really tuned in, it's like it's we weren't really able to tell the future. It's able to see what is here right now in the present, and what the Oracle was able to see in Neo was you don't believe yet. You don't know you're the one. So she didn't tell him he wasn't. She didn't confirm that he was. She told him exactly what he needed to hear to get for him to continue his own journey to getting into that point, to where he would know himself.
knowledge from within through walking the walk.
Neo, sooner or later you're going to realize, just as I did, there's a difference between knowing the path.
Yeah, school is to the comment
In
here,
fact,
Ash.
we get a subtle hint
School
that the
is where
Oracle does
major
believe
amount
Neo
of
will develop
programming
into the
happens.
One. She alludes to Trinity's
Not all
feelings
bad,
for him.
but
I can
again,
see why she
limited.
likes you.
Who?
And we later learn that she predicted the man Trinity loved would be the one.
The Oracle told me that I would fall in love and that man
Always comes down to love. That's another great true
It's
point
pretty
here.
clear from early on that Neo is going to end up being the one. The real question is why he is. Is this the story of Neo discovering he's the one, or deciding that he is? Are we free to decide our own fates?
Do you believe in fate, Neo?
No,
Why not?
because I don't like the idea that I'm not in control of my life.
When the Oracle anticipates Neo knocking over the vase,
And don't worry about the vase.
What vase?
she raises this unknowable issue of whether the future is decided or chosen.
What's really going to bake your noodle later on is, would you still have broken it if I hadn't said anything?
The Oracle's role in this story isn't to resolve this duality, but to reframe it. She disproves our assumption that fate and freedom are an
That's
either
funny,
or.
Ash.
And she's never wrong.
I think that's a good point there. Like,
Try.
like the narrator here says, you're going to decide or discover. And I think the truth is really, it's kind of in between. You decide to discover, right? So I think what the Oracle is going to try to say is, and you can do this. You don't need an Oracle. You can do this in your own mind. This is all society's built on, is if you're in a binary world, if you're in a world of duality, you can come up with a point and a counterpoint to infinity, right? So the point is to get out of the binary, go past it, and that's where you're going to find truth.
And not to think of it in terms of right and wrong.
There we
She
go.
is a guide, Neo.
She predicts patterns while
Thanks,
leaving
Morpheus.
room for the randomness that stems from choice. Her vision of destiny, an ever-shifting inkblot test.
Do you think you are the one?
When she meets Neo, her inkblot test of him reflects that he doesn't believe in himself, so he's not there yet. The necessary elements are present, but Neo will also have to decide his destiny.
You got the gift.
Incredible. Incredible.
But it looks like you're waiting
explanation
for
by
something.
this channel.
The fifth step of the philosopher's journey is overcoming doubt.
You have to let it all go, Neo. Fear, doubt, and disbelief.
Self-doubt.
Neo's doubt is
Doubt in
symbolized by
yourself.
his fear of
Doubt in
falling.
your
This is
intuition.
seen already
Doubt
when
in
he's
what you
still in
know.
the Matrix.
There are two ways out of this building. One is that scaffold, the other is in their custody.
And pre-liberated Neo caves to his fear. During his training, Neo faces another great height. This time he makes the choice to jump, but he doesn't make it. So the fall demonstrates that he doesn't truly
Choice
believe in his own
to
capabilities
discover.
just yet.
Everybody
Right.
falls the first time.
The problem of doubt is embodied in the character of Cypher, who whispers in the Resistance's ear, tempting them to submit to the inevitable victory of machines.
I'm tired of this war.
Cypher.
Tired of fighting.
Incredible
Tired of
actor.
this
Same
ship
actor that
being
plays
cold,
Ralphie
eating
in
the
The
same
Sopranos.
goddamn
Ooh,
goop every
it's incredible
day.
making you hate
Cypher rejects the truth,
I know this steak doesn't exist.
choosing instead to descend back into hedonism and ignorance.
Ignorance is bliss.
Through Cypher, the
That's his
Matrix
choice,
challenges its own thesis that mankind truly wants liberation and enlightenment.
I choose the Matrix.
The character
But this is where I disagree with Cypher, right? Like, you know, like Cypher represents the ego self, right? The ego self that needs to validate his, you know, his decisions, and he comes up with ignorance is bliss, and that's actually the exact opposite, right? Like literally, ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is the perpetuation of the pain and the programs that keep you where you're at. Awareness is bliss. Okay. That awareness of what you truly are is bliss. Because you are bliss. So if you follow your bliss, you find out who you truly are. And if you trust who you really are, your intuition, life's going to start to work out for you in a much better way, which again brings you that bliss.
forces us to consider, which would we really choose? A difficult but free life or blissful subjugation?
I know what you're thinking. Why, oh why
No such thing
didn't
as
I take
blissful
the blue
subjugation.
pill?
Many of us secretly prefer the lie and will even fight to preserve it if that illusion maintains our materialist comforts and protects us from suffering.
Most of these
That's
people
programming.
are not ready to be unplugged.
Right.
And many of them are so inert, so hopelessly dependent on the system that they will fight to protect it.
Oh,
The Matrix
that's how
suggests that
programmed you
most
can
of
get.
us already are choosing the blue pill. As we learn in The Matrix Reloaded, only 1% of people have minds that reject the Matrix.
99% of all test subjects accepted the program as long as they were given
I think
the
it's
choice,
a little bit higher.
even if they were only aware of the choice at a near unconscious level.
Cypher wants badly for Neo to fail.
So Ash, it's not tough to not be you. You are you. You're just discovering who you are beyond the programming, beyond who you think you are into who you really are. So there's a difference between thinking and knowing.
Did answer me before. If you bought into Morpheus' bullshit.
We get the sense he may know to some degree about the Oracle's prophecy that Trinity would love the One, because he keeps asking her if she thinks Neo's the real deal.
You don't, do you?
All I want is a little yes or no.
Even though he
Cypher's
believes in
such a great
nothing,
bad guy.
he craves certainty in this belief.
Yes.
Morpheus was right.
The ego
And there's
always
no way I
craves
can pull this
certainty.
plug.
I mean, if Neo's the one, then there'd have to be some kind of
A miracle to stop me.
In pursuit of this certainty, he
Enlightenment
murders
is
his fellow
totally
rebels
cool
and
with that
nearly
one.
sabotages their whole operation before he's killed. Yet, Cypher's own death here is redundant. He was already about to essentially kill himself by erasing his agency and consciousness to become mindless fodder for a machine network.
I go back to sleep.
Great
And when I
point.
wake up, I don't remember a goddamn thing.
Cypher was already committing
Cypher's
suicide.
desperate need for proof that humankind's situation is truly hopeless stems from his knowledge deep down that what he's done is evil. Choosing ignorance is enabling oppression. Anyone who's plugged into the Matrix can be taken over by an agent at any moment, making them a tool for the system of slavery.
The very minds of the people we are trying to save. But until we do, these people are still a part of that system, and that makes them our enemy.
No amount of rational knowledge can overcome doubt. It can only be defeated by Neo's next stage, belief.
I know that's what it looks like, but it's not. I can't explain to you
believe.
why it's not.
The moment when Neo discovers belief is the point when we feel the plot start to turn in his favor.
That's why I have to go.
Why?
Because I believe in something.
After Morpheus is captured and tortured for the access code to Zion, the one remaining free human city, the Resistance considers pulling Morpheus's plug. No one has ever beaten an agent, so they're certain it's impossible to do so. Neo then decides to do the impossible.
So this belief, this self-belief, like she said in the movie, is where everything starts to go in his favor. And like the same thing with you. If you're on a path, or if you want to get on a path to enlightenment, the moment you start to believe in yourself, you're going to realize, to quote the amazing book, The Alchemist. If you haven't read that, go read it right now. It's super short, super incredible book. Once you find or tap into your essence, start to discover that, you walk in alignment with that, you'll realize that the whole universe conspires in your favor. And that's the key point from the book The Alchemist. And that's exactly what's happening here to Neo. Ash, were you on your own? No, I was not on my own. I have a lot of credible people, support networks around me, and together in this process of life, I've had to, again, the movie Matrix, these are a lot of things that exist. There's a lot of hints that exist out in the world that can kind of hint to the truth. And it's on us, ultimately we're not on our own, but ultimately we have to do the final trick ourselves, right? We have to be the ones that walk that path.
Save Morpheus.
I believe I can bring him back.
It's no accident that this is the choice the Oracle signposts for Neo. It's the crucible in which his true nature will be forged, determined, revealed. He still doubts he's the one.
I'm not the one, Trinity.
Neo doesn't have the ego to abstractly believe he's the savior of all humankind, but when the mentor he loves and admires more than anything is in danger, he unconsciously and irrationally believes in his ability to save him, showing that he doesn't
unconsciously. Irrationally, yes, but that's going beyond the mind. I would say consciously. For the first time, he's conscious versus unconscious. I would equate unconscious to being driven by programs, being driven on autopilot. Conscious is agency, active choice.
Does know he has the one's power. He just doesn't know he knows yet.
So what do you need besides a miracle?
Guns. Lots of guns.
The three main characters, Morpheus, Trinity, and Neo, are all driven by beliefs.
Morpheus believes something, and he was ready to give his life.
Yeah, some programs can be helpful.
Meanwhile, Cypher's weakness comes from the fact that he lacks belief. The very last thing he says is,
I don't believe it.
As Stephen Fowler observes in Beyond the Matrix, just as Neo's name is an anagram for one, Cypher's name is an alternate spelling of cipher, which means zero. It's fitting that these two opposite characters correspond to 1 and 0, the two digits of the binary system which computers operate in. This suggests that ultimately what seems to be an array of choices boils down to just two: believe in something or believe in nothing.
Believe it or not, you piece of shit, you're still gonna burn.
The Matrix posits that faith is something. These two opposite characters correspond to 1 and 0, the two digits of the binary system which computers operate in. This suggests that
in a
ultimately
world,
what seems to be an array of choices boils down to just two: believe in something or believe in nothing.
Right, in computer simulation, it's 1 or 0. It's binary. It's duality. I insist, though, in the path to enlightenment, which you're going to do, you're going to go beyond. the binary options beyond a duality. And you'll realize that
Believe it
we realize that everything comes out of nothing.
or not, you piece of shit, you're still gonna burn.
The Matrix posits that faith is much stronger than mere knowledge. It's something no
There we
one can
go.
take from you.
Let me tell you what I believe.
Faith is a
believe
word,
Morpheus
but it
means
may
more
not be
to
the
me than he
best
does to
word.
you. I believe if you are really serious about saving him, you are going to need my help.
That no one can argue you
Trinity
out
laying
of.
down the
If
law.
you don't like it, I believe you can go to hell.
Steadfast belief in his mission makes
enough
Neo
for you?
able to dodge bullets like an agent can.
How did you do that?
Do what?
You moved like they do.
Yet Neo's still hit by a bullet, symbolizing that his self-doubt lingers.
Wasn't fast enough.
Trinity comes to his rescue,
Dodge this.
foreshadowing how she will provide the secret weapon to complete his philosophical journey soon after this. When Agent Smith takes over a homeless man's body in the subway tunnel just after Trinity and Morpheus have exited, due to his growing faith, Neo does the unthinkable. He stands his ground against an agent. At this point, you might say that Neo's belief makes him an even match for Agent Smith, but he's not yet surpassed the agents. After all, they wholly believe too. As software programs,
Belief
they have this
is
belief
the
written into
start,
their
but
code, the equivalent of their DNA. Smith keeps
the
calling
next
him
step
Mr. Anderson?
is
which
to let
pushes
go.
Neo to cast off his
everything.
slave name and claim his true identity.
My name is Neo.
That's
He
right.
is at last trusting in his individual power.
What is he doing?
He's beginning to believe.
Even though Neo wins this fight, the agent can just stop the train and take over another body. Thus, Neo runs again. But just before he's to exit the Matrix, he's taken by surprise.
The key moment
He
right here.
flatlines. In this
Boom.
moment, the
He
Oracle's
dies.
prophecy that either Morpheus or he would die comes true. But we're about to find out her word's deeper meaning was obscured by technicalities. Neo wasn't yet the one because he had to die in this current form and be reborn as someone new. In fact, his name, Neo, is a prefix meaning new.
But it looks like you're waiting for something.
The new one.
Your next life, maybe.
The last and most crucial step of Neo's transition into the One is
The Oracle says, it seems like you're waiting for something. What? Your next life, maybe. Signaling that he was going to need to die and be reborn.
love.
There we go. Step 7, love. Sorry it's taken so long to get here. I didn't think that we'd be talking for 57 minutes, but here we are. Love is the key. Let's listen to a little bit of this and I'll jump into my perspective.
You can't be dead. You can't be. Because I love you.
Another fact that holds true until this point is that death in the Matrix kills a person in real life.
The body cannot live without the mind.
However, the physical sensations in the Matrix are an illusion, so Trinity's love in the real world, coupled with Neo's exceptional ability to separate his real mind from his Matrix body, leads to his resurrection.
Now get up.
Belief made him as powerful as an agent, but belief powered by love is what makes Neo unstoppable. Now he fulfills Morpheus's earlier prediction.
That I can dodge bullets?
I'm trying to tell you that when you're ready,
you won't need to.
You won't have to.
Armed with agency, self-belief, and love,
So yeah, agency, self-belief, and love. But what makes love so important from an enlightenment standpoint, and this is the big point, is it's not like it's not how they, again, this is they're analyzing the film, and what we're trying to do is take elements from the film and take it, a step beyond that into elements of enlightenment. Agency plus self-belief plus love, the equation doesn't really work out that way. What it really is steps. This step leads to this step, which leads to the final step, and the final step, which is love. Love is the feeling that represents intunement, right? The realization of oneness feels like love. It's what comes through when you believe in yourself, when you love someone. It's like, think of these, these opportunities of like these portals in the Matrix, Trinity's love came through and made Neo the one. But in reality, what's really happening here is that as long as you're trapped in the Matrix, there can be no true love. So when you feel true love, that is feeling the oneness that is you. In other words, that's feeling your essence. So for Neo, it was self-belief, which led to self-acceptance, which led to his self-love. Once he tapped into his self-love, then and only then was he able to be loved by Trinity. Because someone can't love you until you love yourself. And and again, what you realize is the two separate selves are part of the matrix, are part of the illusion. Because the reality there is love. There just is the oneness. So Neo, through self-belief, allows him to accept who he truly is. Acceptance of that true essence, that is self-love, which allows Trinity's love to finally open up and manifest, right? Then that the self that was limiting him, the smaller self, the doubting self, the ego self dies, right? And the true self, the Neo, the oneness, the new self, his true essence, is born, and no longer constricted or limited to the control, the programs of the matrix. You're operating at a different level. So yeah, that point is massive, and I'll
Neo
bring
sees
it
through the
home
agent's
here.
illusory forms to the pure code they really are. This is a visualization of seeing the truth in the very essence of things. Now that he can glimpse this total truth, he can bend the code to his will. And after he goes inside an agent to destroy it from within, finally the agents run from him. During this sequence, we hear holy music, underlining that this infinite level of insight is godlike.
He is the one.
We've seen hints throughout that Neo's story can be interpreted as the Christ narrative.
Jesus
We all get
Christ,
attacked,
he's
man.
fast.
Makes us
He
stronger.
dies and is resurrected, thanks to the love of Trinity, or
The Trinity?
you can also associate the three central characters loosely with the three figures of the Trinity: the
Right.
Father,
Morpheus, you're more than a leader to us. You are a father.
the Son,
Hallelujah. You're my savior, man. My own personal Jesus Christ.
and the Holy Spirit. The nameplate of the Resistance's ship alludes to the Bible verse Mark 3:11, and whenever the unclean spirits saw him, they fell down before him and cried out, "You are the Son of God." Neo is betrayed by a Judas figure, and most fundamentally, he's a radical who comes to spread a world-altering truth in the hearts of people. Neo's defeat of the agents signifies the triumph of human values, culminating in love, the most irrational value of all. At the very end,
It's human values. I would say it's human essence.
Rage Against the Machine plays. The significance of this isn't just fighting the machines in this story, it's telling us to rage against what seems certain, impossible, set in stone. And in the last shot, when Neo flies upwards, this imagery is reminiscent of the Buddha.
Okay, so that essentially gets to the point of the divine essence coming through and Neo finally walking in his purpose as the one. Of course, this is a movie. This is a fantastic movie. So it doesn't try to purport to tell the story of enlightenment. It just, all good stories end up revealing a lot of truths about enlightenment, right? And to sum this up, there's a lot of Easter eggs throughout the thing. Hopefully you enjoyed the stream and you can kind of go back and watch it again. But the main point, the kicker, is love. And the reason is because what you got to realize, and my overall point is, unlike the film The Matrix, our matrix isn't separate from the oneness. So our world isn't separate from what I would call the real world. It's just a limited representation of the real world. The real world is everything. It is oneness. It is the stuff with form. It's the things, and it's the space in between. When we go back to that metaphor that they mentioned about the fish becoming aware of the water, right? It's the water that holds everything. That is everything in its entirety. Um, Another metaphor that I heard from Eckhart Tolle that drives this point home for me is it's like the silence in which the sound comes from. So like if you think about it, it's like there's you don't really notice the silence until you hear the sound. So if you can notice the silence behind the sound, you realize that you have something coming out of nothing. All right. And that begins to get you thinking in a different way, right? This is the type of awareness and stuff that comes with the territory of enlightenment. So one thing that Totally talks about is during the lifetime of a sound, it's always existing within silence. So as we exist in this matrix, we're always existing within something else, something bigger. Okay, the unmanifested. Just like sound comes out of silence, is always surrounded by silence, and then ultimately goes back to silence. What you realize is silence is what allows the sound to exist in the first place. Okay, it's the space in between objects. In the matrix, we focus on the objects. Remember, like Einstein said, we focus on, the servant, but not on the gift, right? This is shifting that back into alignment, right? It's fish being aware of the water, right? It's the sound being aware of the silence. So like in the matrix, the one in the matrix, love, that what that is that is the entering, that is the manifestation of the unmanifested. It is the sound that gives meaning to the silence, which is incentric. That's the intrinsic part. That's the inner part, which is the know thyself, which is that inner journey. Okay. Yet the unmanifested, just like silence always surrounds the sound, the unmanifested exists in everything, or it is present in everything, not in the form in which it exists, but around it. So what I would say is, just like sound, just like silence is an intrinsic part of all sound, love is an intrinsic part of all things. All things, right? All things, that oneness, that which love comes across as a feeling. So it's really not love. Love is our feeling of it, but the itness, the unmanifestedness that exists around everything, the awareness of that is what enlightenment is, right? That puts you on that path. And then it's a process. It's a continuous process. And films like The Matrix, they give us a lot of clues. They reveal a lot of truths to us. And I really appreciate um this channel, The Take. They did an incredible job, breaking this down. And I hope you guys enjoyed this journey. I hope this helps illuminate a little bit of something that's so hard to grasp with the mind. That's why I made this channel, is so that we can look at things, and if I find clues, because I think there's clues to this everywhere, just to show it to you, and just to bring you, into this perspective. And I appreciate you guys joining me for this journey. So if you like this video, please subscribe. Thank you for engaging in the chat. Thank you for your likes, and thank you for sharing this. I appreciate it. Till next time. Peace, guys.